Hello, everyone. My name is Alessia Perjean of knowthyselfandheal.com. So the sun has entered into Virgo. And so what I'd like to do and what I like to do as the sun ingresses into a new sign is to do a video where we talk about what this particular archetypal consciousness is and what's happening in this season as the sun is in this sign, as well as do a collective card pull. So I like to switch out the cards that I use every month. This month we're going to use the Carolyn Mace archetype cards for collective contemplation as we navigate Virgo season. So what is Virgo consciousness? Virgo is considered a transitional archetype. And so this is really where we have seated consciousness from Aries, where in Aries we've emerged out of the cosmic womb, which is Pisces, and Aries is I am, I exist, right? And we cultivate our own identity, which is correlated to Aries as well, and Mars. We cultivate that identity through the psychological development of Aries through through Leo. And Leo is where we have discovered that we are a separate entity than our family of origin or our primary caregivers or our environment. And we recognize that we have our own unique and personal contribution of light in the world. And as we psychologically develop beyond Leo, we recognize that this contribution of light is actually in service to consciousness itself. It is actually, of course, still in service to one's own personal evolutionary path and cultivation of light, but also is contributing a very unique and specific quality of light to the collective consciousness. And so this is Virgo, is really assessing this service in one's own personal evolutionary path and this contribution of service to the collective unconscious and collective consciousness. So from Aries to Virgo, we find in the natural wheel of consciousness what's called a quincunx, also called an inconjunct. And this is 150 degrees. So this is a way of measuring energy, ultimately, and how that energy is felt and completes the whole, right? So when we get to Virgoan consciousness, we're looking at this 150 degree angle that we've developed psychologically speaking, right? So from Aries to Virgo. And Virgo is the archetypal energy that is also correlated to self-improvement. And so what does that mean? It really does refer to this quincunx or inconjunct, this 150 degree angle where we are making adjustments. We are fine-tuning, we are refining our own personal light and what we're contributing to the collective consciousness. And as I said, the collective unconscious. And the reason I say collective consciousness or collective unconscious is because Virgo sits across the sky from Pisces, right? So in the natural wheel of consciousness, Virgo and Pisces have a very special connection because they actually work together. We really are, when we're talking about Virgo, we're also talking about Pisces consciousness and vice versa, right? Because as one aspect of that wheel is energized, so in other words, as the sun has moved into Virgo, we're not only having the light shine on our own Virgoan consciousness, but it's also shining the light on Piscean consciousness, right? And so if you have personal planets or planets in your natal chart that are in Virgo or in Pisces, this is really activating this whole axis of consciousness. And Pisces is the collective. And as I said, the collective unconscious. And Virgo is the individual. This is how I see Virgo. It's the individual and our individual relationship to the collective consciousness, as well as the collective unconscious, and how our personal and unique light contributes to the collective unconscious and collective consciousness. And so when we are psychologically developing through that Virgoan lens, we are really looking at where it is that we can refine the service that we're bringing to our own lives and to the collective. I always think of Virgo as the priestess or priest. And no matter what our gender, you know, I want to say that Virgo is a yin sign, so Pisces also a yin sign. So this is consciousness moving inward. And this is a receptive energy. It's yin energy, right? And this is where we're actually pulling our consciousness inward to really assess our own, as I said, service in the world and to our own evolutionary path. So Virgo being associated with priest or priestess, whether you are a male or a female, of course, this is still a feminine energy. It's or considered feminine in the sense that it's yin and it's receptive, right? But we can still say that, of course, this is priest and priestess. And I always think of this as the priest or priestess that goes in to tend the garden of consciousness. And so really, this is the part of our psyche that is actually going into the seeds that we've planted since Aries, since we've emerged into this new cycle, whatever that may be. And so, and you know, maybe a new identity, right? So we've planted seeds back in Aries season. And now we're coming in to really see how this garden is growing and really assessing the quality of consciousness we desire to grow, not only in ourselves, but also in the collective. And so the priest or priestess goes into this garden of consciousness and actually looks at the details, as Virgo is known to do. And I really like to correlate Virgo with discernment. So Virgo discerns what is actually contributing to that which we want to grow and what is actually not contributing to that which we want to grow. So when we go into the garden, we look and we might find that there are specific things that we've planted that are actually overtaking other things we wish to grow in the garden. The garden of our own consciousness, the garden of what we're actually really building on the earth plane. Virgo is an earth sign. And so it is really about growing our consciousness on the earth plane, right? And so Virgo goes out and into the garden and may do some pruning, may need to cut some things back so that other things have room to grow. Or We may go into the garden and recognize that there's a specific weed that's growing that is actually not contributing to the specific quality of consciousness we're desiring to cultivate. And so when I say quality, it doesn't mean good or bad. And this is where discernment comes in. It doesn't mean good or bad. It just means that there's a specific quality of consciousness that is part of our personal evolutionary path to contribute to the collective and to help the collective on its evolutionary path, the collective consciousness or collective unconscious. So really it is about, what quality of consciousness do we desire to cultivate in our own psyches as well as in the collective and collective consciousness. So Virgo is very much correlated to humility and humbleness. And one of the beautiful things that I love about Virgo is that Virgo understands that there is a difference between discernment and judgment, right? So discernment is really looking at, okay, let me bring in that Mercury is the planetary guide or ruler of Virgo. But interestingly, it provides a different function than Mercury being the planetary guide or ruler of Gemini. As Mercury guides Gemini consciousness, this is where Mercury is like, hey, let's go out and talk to lots of different people with lots of different points of view, lots of different types of information, and so that we can learn all that we can learn about whether it's any given subject or it's just anything in consciousness. Gemini loves to learn. This is the part of our consciousness that is curious. We want to learn about life. We want to learn about consciousness. And Mercury's guidance in that way is actually will bring our consciousness out into those curiosities, that desire to really learn about even what we would seem to deem as opposing points of view or opposing information. However, a healthy Gemini consciousness recognizes that both opposing points of view are necessary for supporting a more holistic point of view. And so healthy Gemini consciousness is really, it knows that it's not this or that, it's this and that, right? And when we find Mercury as a planetary guide to Virgo, it's a very different function in our consciousness, where Mercury as it guides Gemini is a yang energy. It's about going out there and getting all the information. As Mercury guides Virgoan consciousness, he says, okay, we've gone out and gotten all of this information, and now we're pulling our consciousness inward. And we're really assessing and sifting through what information is actually assisting me personally in my own personal evolutionary path and contributes to the quality of consciousness that I desire to grow in my own life and as a service to the collective. And so it's a very different function with Mercury here, because this is a yin energy. And this is where Mercury actually utilizes discernment to, really fine-tune what information, what perspectives is actually contributing to one's personal service to the divine. Pisces is very much correlated to the divine. It is the culmination of the entire wheel of consciousness, and it is our own personal relationship to that. It is our individual relationship to the divine, to all of the archetypal energies that we find in the natural wheel of consciousness. It is ruled or guided by Neptune and Jupiter. So this is really about our own relationship to the divine essence, what we personally see as divine, which is actually very directly correlated to our own expression of the divine. And so Virgo is really, with this mercurial energy, guided by Mercury here in Virgo, is really assessing what is it that contributes to my personal service to my own evolutionary path, as well as my personal contribution of light in the collective consciousness, in this garden of consciousness that we are all cultivating individually, that we are all contributing to individually and therefore collectively. So Virgo is very much related to humility and humbleness, because it is not in its productive state. It is not going to say that anything's necessarily bad or good. It's more that, it's understanding that all perspectives, including in the whole wheel of consciousness, all perspectives support this garden of consciousness that we're cultivating here, and this holistic point of view. And yet, in our own individual contribution, we do notice what it is that's actually contributing to our personal contribution, and what is actually maybe a distraction, or could maybe actually be taking nutrients out of the soil, and therefore taking nutrients from the quality of vegetables or fruits or flowers, or what it is that we are growing in consciousness as our personal contribution. And so this is where Virgo goes into that garden and tends to the garden, cleans it up. It actually takes the weeds out that really would be taking nutrients from that which it wants to grow. And so this humility is really an important piece, because Virgo knows that humility and humbleness is actually where we are receptive, knowing that Virgo is a yin sign. So it is inclusive, because remember, it is opposing Pisces, which is the culmination of the entire wheel, which means inclusiveness, right? So it is inclusive, but it is discerning on one's own personal service. And so it knows that with discernment, it is actually allowing oneself to still receive this chi, this energy from this holistic point of view, even if it is not, if it is selecting something specific to grow, it's still encompassing the whole and the value of the whole. And so this is true discernment. And really, Virgo in the natural wheel of consciousness is the 6th house. And the sixth house, and therefore Virgo consciousness, is really interested in, as I said, self-improvement. And so it is very interested in actually creating practices and routines that support one's health and vitality. And so this is also where humility and humbleness come in, because this practice is actually allowing oneself to still receive this inclusiveness, this psychological perspective of the inclusiveness, Pisces. And yet also funneling the energy in the garden of consciousness in a way that is in alignment with one's personal service to the collective. And of course, to one's own personal evolutionary path and expression of the divine. So, interestingly, as the sun has moved into Virgo, what's happening now, and what's interesting about this particular Virgo season in 2022, is that Mars has just recently entered into Gemini. And that happened on August 21st. So just a couple days before the sun ingressed into Virgo. And if you don't already know, Gemini and Virgo are in a 90-degree angle, which is called a square. And a square, or a 90-degree angle between 2 points in the sky, or could be 2 planets in the sky, right? Energetically is often felt as tension, an internal tension. Really, that tension is there because the way that I see it is that we're actually prodded by that tension to really utilize both of these archetypal energies in a efficient way, where it's bringing each other into the picture. And so the pressure is, okay, yes, Gemini, say this is Gemini, right? Yes, Gemini, it is important to go out there and get all this information and learn all you can, you know? But then Virgo's like, okay, well, you need to actually, it's good to take a moment and actually assess what part of this information is actually applicable in your own personal path and your own cultivation of your own service in the world. Because you could just go out there all day long, forever and ever, to look at information, right? So there's this part of our consciousness that feels this tension between Gemini and Virgo. And so they really actually facilitate each other's function. Even though they seem different, and they are different, they still support each other in the more holistic point of view. They serve this purpose, each of them, in contributing to the more holistic point of view in our consciousness. So as Mars moved into Gemini, and it will be there for 6 months, 7 months, something like that, 6 or 7 months. What's happening is that as the sun has entered into Virgo, Mars is squaring the sun. And so what is Mars? Mars is our applying energy. It's our instinct to move, to seed things, to initiate new things, to bring momentum and consciousness. So Mars squaring the sun, we can feel this Mars energy. And especially if we have planets in Virgo, we'll feel this Mars energy, because as Mars is moving through Gemini and then will retrograde in Gemini in October and then go all the way back. I believe it retrogrades at 27 degrees. So it moves almost through the entire Gemini sky, and then it retrogrades back and goes all, quite far back. And then it's going to go forward again and have to traverse that whole sky again. So in this time frame of Mars and Gemini, it's going to be squaring our Virgoan consciousness. And so we're going to likely feel this pressure. Now, Mars in Gemini likes to go out and communicate, to pass along information, to receive information from other people. As I said, different points of view, like go out and communicate and learn, right? And as Mars is doing this, it can really be giving us an opportunity to really look at how we're actually going out and inclined to learn, inclined to talk, communicate, write, research different points of view. And as Mars is in Gemini, each month that it's in Gemini, remember at least the moon's going to be going through Virgo. So we're going to experience the moon through Virgo squaring Mars, right? And so this is really beneficial, because this is going to actually help us assess on an internal level our own relationship to Mars energy and our own relationship to Gemini energy, as well as our relationship to the masculine, Yang energy. So interestingly, one thing to recognize is that Virgo and Pisces is the axis of consciousness that is correlated to the healer. So this is the part of our consciousness that is a healer. And whether we have planets in Virgo or Pisces or not, we still have this in our consciousness. So we have this capacity to really analyze and assess and discern what is contributing to our own health and vitality, and what is actually debilitating our health and vitality. And so this is why it is the healer. This is why the 6th house is so much about setting up practices and routines that actually contribute to our health and vitality and contribute to a healthy consciousness and a healthy cultivation of consciousness in the collective. So as the sun is in Virgo, at some point, it's going to be quincunx Chiron in Aries. So Mars is the planetary guide or ruler of Aries energy. So we're really looking at with Chiron and Aries, because Chiron is really about the wounded healer. So as Chiron's in Aries, we're really looking at where is it that I may have been wounded by my own masculinity or masculine consciousness, or others' masculine consciousness, whether male or female. So the wound to the masculine. And because Aries and Mars is so much about initiating the new for us, as well as our masculine and our identity. As Chiron is in Aries, it's very important to be sure that we are acting on our own behalf, Mars, based on our own personal evolutionary drive, how Mars acts on behalf of Pluto, because Mars and Pluto have a very special relationship. Mars acts on behalf of the unconscious. It acts without forethought. It acts with instinct. That instinct comes from Pluto, the unconscious mind. Mars and Pluto are planetary guide and ruler to Scorpio. Scorpio is right now the south node of the moon, as the north node of the moon is in Taurus. So collectively, we're all looking at, individually and collectively, our emotional relationship to Taurus Scorpio consciousness. Taurus Scorpio consciousness is really the axis of consciousness that is the reason we incarnate. It shows the embodiment of the soul. It shows our values that are cultivated based on this unconscious drive, Scorpio, Pluto, to empower oneself and empower others, to evolve one's own empowerment. So, Mars acts on behalf of Pluto. It's instinctual. So if you want to see what's going on in your unconscious mind, notice what your instincts are, right? What are your instincts? And also, what are your triggers? So we can really look at when we get triggered, it's because likely there's something in the unconscious that is asking to be resolved, so that we can harness that energy to our empowerment and really deepen our connection to our own soul and our own evolutionary path, and really cultivate our power and empowerment, empowering others in the collective. So as Mars is in Gemini and it's square to Virgo, this is helping us, I really believe, this is helping us to actually do the evolutionary investigation in regards to our relationship to the masculine energy, internally and collectively. Virgo forms this inconjunct from Aries, so remembering that it is the healer within us. It is the one that knows how to self-correct, how to make adjustments, how to tend the garden of one's own psyche and pull the weeds that actually take nutrients from the quality of consciousness we wish to grow in our own personal evolutionary path, and as a service to that, and as a service to collective consciousness in this garden of consciousness that we are all growing together. So as we feel that pressure from Mars, we can really take a moment to discern how it is that we can actually do our own personal healing work and the healing of the masculine. So Pluto is in Capricorn, been in Capricorn since 2008. I'm sure if you're following astrology, you know that. But remembering that Pluto is the planetary guide to the south node of the moon right now. Pluto is in Capricorn, and this is connected to this, Cancer axis. So Capricorn and Cancer are two spokes of the wheel of this cardinal yin consciousness. So Pluto's been going through Capricorn and actually exposing the wound to the masculine, Mars, because, Pluto squares Aries and Libra when it's in Capricorn, right? So Pluto's exposing our own internal structure of consciousness in our own cultivation of emotional security, how it is that we actually become emotionally secure, right? And so this structure of consciousness that we cultivate internally is very much correlated to our emotional security and our relationship to emotional security. Now, this then also correlates to how we personally see reality, how we internally see reality, but also how we internally then create reality outside of us, right? Because it's cultivated within first and then outside of ourselves, right? So Pluto's exposing this. It's also exposing how this has affected our relationships, as Pluto in Capricorn has been squaring Libra. And what is contributing to healthy relationships? What is contributing to our own personal essential needs being met in relationships? Are we really regenerating energy in our relationships, or are we cultivating and sustaining relationships that are unsustainable because it's imbalanced? It's not regenerating energy, it's depleting energy. So as Mars and Gemini is squaring this Virgoan consciousness, we can really be we can be feeling irritation, frustration, tension. And all of those energies are actually really informing us of energy that's desiring to move in a new direction, energy that's desiring to initiate something new. So this tension can actually be utilized as an opportunity to heal. So as we talked about, Mercury is the planetary guide to Virgo, and Mercury is now in what's called its pre-shadow phase. So what is the pre-shadow phase? The pre-shadow phase just means that when a planet is going to change direction, if it's pre-shadow, this means that it's pre-retrograde, right? So as a planet's going to retrograde, when it actually gets to the part of the sky or the degree of the archetype or the sign that it's going to retrograde back to, this is called the pre-shadow phase. So you can really be looking at what's been happening in your communication in the last few days and noticing, because you'll be getting messages and communications, likely, or whatever's happening in your world is giving you the opportunity. It's informing you of what this Mercury retrograde is about for you. So Mercury actually goes retrograde on September 10th, and it retrogrades at 8 degrees 55 minutes of Libra, and then it's going to go direct at 24 degrees 12 minutes of Virgo, on October 2nd of 2022. So what house is this happening? What houses is this happening in your chart? Because this is where these messages, this aspect of life that you're getting messages about, right? Where it's happening in your life personally. Interestingly, when Mercury goes direct on October 2nd, Venus will be at 3 or 4 degrees of Libra, and Jupiter will be in Aries opposing Venus in Libra. And what is an opposition? It's actually considered a Libran aspect, because it is where an opposition tends to happen by circumstances, people, situations in the outside world that actually bring up these two planetary energies in consciousness. So Venus, our relationships. Venus, as it is the ruler of Libra, is really about, it's the yang form of Libra. Yang form of Venus. So it is, really about our relationship dynamics, right? Our relationships. Jupiter makes everything bigger. And so Jupiter will make whatever is going on in our relationships bigger, right? And so as Mercury, whenever a planet is stationing and changing direction, it's very, very important to be looking at what's going on in your life, because this is giving you clues to utilize this opportunity to your most highest advantage, right? If you're paying attention, you can really be efficient with the energy and the opportunities that are presenting to you. And so when you're talking about Venus, well, it has a dual rulership. Venus is also the ruler of the North Node right now. And that's because Venus is the ruler of Taurus, or planetary guide to Taurus, which is a yin energy, the yin form of Venus. So whatever's happening in our relationships, whatever communications we're getting in our relationships, this can really actually have us bringing our consciousness inward and looking at, is this really resonant with my values? Is this really resonant with my own self-trust and what I love, what I desire to cultivate on the earth plane, what I desire to embody on the earth plane? And is this really representative of my own connection to my own soul and the expression of my soul and my own empowerment, as well as the empowerment of the individuals that we are in relationship to? So it's something to pay attention to as we move into this Mercury retrograde and experience this Mercury retrograde. And remember that Mercury retrograde, it is a yin energy. It's where we actually pull our consciousness inward. It's actually where we turn from left brain thinking to right brain thinking. We allow our left brain logical mind to rest, our physical brain to rest, and we allow the higher mind to come in. We allow the intuitive, feminine part of the brain to come in and actually really give us insight into what our next steps are. Really allowing a more holistic function and use of our brains, because we are more than just this physical brain. We are also spirit. And so Mercury retrograde is really allowing spirit to step in, allowing spirit to speak, allowing this intuitive nature of ours that actually just knows things because it actually relaxes itself enough to know, right? It relaxes itself enough to receive. Okay, so Mercury retrograde is a really wonderful time for that. It's also a wonderful time to actually rewire the synapses of your brain. Now, as Scorpio is the South Node at the moment, this is a beautiful time, a lovely, this is a perfect time to be actually reprogramming our unconscious mind, reprogramming our defaults. And what are our defaults? Scorpio, Pluto. It is actually how we've survived and our perception of thrival in the past. But the thing is we evolve, we expand our consciousness. And so we metamorphosize into something new based on that. So how we perceive survival and thrival in the past may not be current, especially with transiting Uranus in Taurus, because it's been quickening our evolution. It's been quickening our sense of what we value, what we love, our heart chakra. It's been awakening the heart. I always think of Uranus as the defibrillator. It awakens the heart. It's like shocks to the heart, right? That wake it up, get it going, get back into an alignment with our own heart chakra, into alignment with our own heart currently, and expressing that, expressing what we love currently. And so it's a great time with South Node in Scorpio. As long as the South Node's in Scorpio, we can be reprogramming these defaults. So it's a great time to take advantage of that. Notice where fears come up. Notice when it is that you're feeling like you're disempowered, because disempowerment is only an indicator that there is something around your own values that you're not aligning with, right? So this is an opportunity. Also, fears are really just, one way to say it is that fear can be a distorted view of what we love and value. So it can be a prompt to an investigative process in our own self-investigation around what is it that I love and value, and where is this fear coming from? This opportunity to probe into deeper understanding of ourselves, a deeper knowing of our own consciousness. And actually, as we do that personal work, we actually are having the capacity to see what it is that keeps us from our own power and our own empowerment and our connection to our soul. So this can deepen our connection to our soul, our evolutionary purpose, our expression of our own empowerment, and our empowering others. So as the nodes are in Taurus, Scorpio, this is what we're doing. This is the opportunities that are there. This is really looking at the emotional component in regards to these things, how we emotionally relate to these things. And as always with Mercury retrograde, we get the opportunity to rewire the synapses of our brain. We can actually change our thoughts. We can change our beliefs by rewiring ourselves. And remember that this means that, we can be deconditioning from thoughts, ideas, and beliefs that actually really are not current, that are really not resonant with us, that really are things that we bought into or we picked up from our family line, our ancestral lineage, our society, our culture, but they may not be a good fit for us, right? In our own personal connection to the divine, which is very unique. So this Mercury retrograde can really be helpful in that. And also recognizing that because Mercury goes retrograde in Libra, likely this will be, how are we relating with ourselves and with others? And making sure that it's resonant with our personal values now, with our own sense of self-love now, in our own sense of our own evolutionary purpose now. So this video is becoming quite long, and there's so much more I could say. So I don't want this to be too long, because it might be hard to watch the whole thing. So I want to pick a card for collective contemplation for our sun ingress in Virgo, as well as navigating Virgo season collectively. So what is a archetype card? I use the Carolyn Mace archetype cards, and so we're going to pick a card for collective contemplation and a point of focus as we navigate Virgo season of 2022. We get Samaritan. So Carolyn May says, the light attribute is refines your capacity to help those you would prefer to ignore. And the shadow attribute is exacting appreciation and recognition for the help you offer. That's very interesting. I think that, you know, it really does relate. I mean, obviously it always does when we pick a card. It's amazing. So it really does relate to Virgo because, as we talked about in this video, Virgo is the part of our consciousness that really does want to be of service to the collective and, of course, be of service to our own evolutionary path. And I think that, you know, in what she's saying about refines your capacity to help those you would prefer to ignore, I think that this really speaks to the humility and humbleness of Virgo. It really, it is really sensitive to the inclusiveness of the collective and the collective experience. And so it really is about being of service to that. It's also very much in correlation with tending the garden, as we talked about, because, you know, the way that I see it is that this is really looking at what is it that we're growing in this garden of consciousness. And Virgo desires to go in and actually eliminate the things that doesn't contribute to healthy consciousness. And what doesn't bring nourishment to the collective thriving in consciousness. And so it doesn't desire to leave things out of its consideration, which is why we, you know, talked about the discernment rather than judgment, because discernment is not ignoring different points of view in consciousness. It's actually utilizing all the points of view that Gemini, for example, has gone out and discovered in our consciousness, right? Or that the collective is working with in consciousness, and it actually then says, okay, you know, what's actually healthy now that we know all the components? What is it that actually contributes to our thriving? And really, with the North Node of the Moon in Taurus right now, this is what we're doing. This is really about what is it that contributes to thriving, not just surviving, which is Taurus also, but are thriving on a collective level. And we can't ignore the things that are not contributing to that. We cannot ignore the weeds that may be overtaking the garden of the things that are actually going to sustain us, whether in our consciousness or in our physical body. What is it that nourishes our senses? Taurus is all about the senses, because it's the senses that inform us of what is actually good for us and what is actually debilitating us. Now, the shadow attribute, she says, is exacting appreciation and recognition for the help you offer. So this makes sense with Virgo, because Virgo is also the archetype that, as I said, is self-improvement. So it is about being of service. And so if we overdo our own service, so we over focus on recognition, which is a Leo component. Leo wants to be recognized, and it's natural for all of us to want to be recognized for the light that we bring, for the love that we bring and that we share. We all share through the expression and cultivation of our own light. This is expressing what we love. This is the natural square from Leo to Taurus. We cultivate the heart chakra in Taurus because Venus is correlated to the heart chakra. So we cultivate our own personal love based on our own evolutionary path. And then we actually find ways to creatively self-actualize that through Leo or the sun sign, wherever our sun is placed. We cultivate that. And we share our unique expression of love in the world based on our own evolution and our own evolutionary path and values and self-value and love that we've cultivated, right? However, part of the relationship of Virgo to Leo is that Virgo is really also tending one's own service, refining that service so that one's own personal recognition isn't getting in the way of the service that we're all contributing with our light, right? And with our love. And so this is making sure that we are keeping our focus on the service. And it's okay to be recognized for the service we're bringing, or honored or appreciated. But if that is becoming the focus, we lose sight of the service that we're bringing. We lose touch with the service that we're actually bringing to the collective. We lose touch with the importance of the space that others are bringing, the light that others are bringing, and the importance of the light of the collective consciousness, the light of each individual. So Virgo is this part of our consciousness that comes in to self-correct, so that everything that we've cultivated is actually being refined and fine-tuned, making sure that, we're not losing sight of the service and losing sight of its own personal piece of the puzzle, right? To something, this big divine tapestry of consciousness, or big puzzle, right? The bigger picture, right? So I hope this is helpful. And if you like this video, if you have any comments, I would love to hear. I love interacting, and I love hearing your insights, your questions, your comments. So please do feel free to share if you feel inclined. And if you got anything out of this video, Please like it if you would, or if you feel inclined. And then also, you're certainly welcome to subscribe to my channel if you'd like to be notified when I post new content. So thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next live, or the next video. Actually, I should say, I meant to come on here too at some point and let you know that I do, if you're on Facebook, I do lives on my personal page. I also have a astrology page. It's called Alice Perjean, Astrology and Healing Arts. I know that the pronunciation of my name doesn't necessarily imply the way you spell it. So you can look to the channel and the spelling of my name. You can find me on Facebook on my personal page if you'd like to follow me or friend me. You can tune into my lives. I also do written posts on current astrological transits. So if you like writing, the writing form, then you can tune in with that. I'd be happy to interact with you there as well. So feel free to do that. I also have a group on Facebook. It's called The Labyrinth, A Journey Through the Eclipses. And that group is actually in support of, so it's a community of us that are really, it's meant to support all of us moving through the eclipse seasons. And so it's really a specialized group about the eclipses, which I think can be really helpful, because eclipse times can be quite exciting and bringing in new elements, right? And so if you would like to be part of the group, you can request to join, and it'll ask you some questions and you can just answer as you wish, and I'll admit you into the group. So I'd love to have you if you feel inclined, and I'll see you in the next video. And enjoy Virgo season 2022.